the shore despite an all-out effort to try to contain the spill. We're following this crisis on the ground, in the water, and from the air. President Obama sends top officials to the spill zone and promises a full review of what went wrong. But there are still lots of questions about why the administration didn't sound the alarm sooner. And Arizona political leaders seem to be having second thoughts about that tough immigration bill the governor signed only last week. We're going to tell you what they're now doing to try to address critics' fears of widespread racial profiling. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room. Strong winds and choppy water in the Gulf of Mexico right now could push a massive oil slick into coastal areas faster and deeper. Miles and miles of floating barriers are in place to try to contain the oil threatening the Louisiana coast, as well as parts of Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi. Florida's governor today declared a state of emergency following the lead of Louisiana only the day before. Obama administration officials in the spill zone say they're pushing BP, that's the company that leased the leaking well, to do more to clean up the spill and prevent a major environmental disaster. It's been 10 days since the Deepwater Horizon drilling rig exploded in the Gulf, unleashing what the government says is about 5,000 barrels of oil a day. Today, the president ordered a full review of the deadly accident and the spill. Let's go to the White House. Our correspondent Dan Lothian is working the story for us. All right, Dan, tell us the latest, what this administration is trying to do to contain this spill.
Well, first of all, a lot of people are asking whether or not the administration has done enough, whether they have acted quickly, but the administration really is defending their actions, saying that the morning after the accident, Deputy Interior Secretary David Hayes went to the region. They also point out that the difficulty in all of this is that the situation has been very fluid, and White House spokesman Robert Gibbs says anyone who says that the government is playing catch-up now is badly ill-informed.
So concerned was the Obama administration of appearing ill-prepared for the Gulf Coast oil spill that for the second day in a row, the president commented on the government's response to the crisis during remarks on unrelated subjects.
We are fully prepared to meet our responsibilities to any and all affected communities.
After initially taking a less aggressive public approach in the hours after the spill,
the Coast Guard has been directing the response to the leaking.
The White House is pushing hard to fully engage in the region and publicize its efforts. Aides released an early morning email detailing the administration's quick action. Then, hours later, the president walked into the Rose Garden and again repeated that he's dispatched key members of his cabinet, including Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, to the Gulf Coast.
And I expect their reports from the ground today.
And apparently trying to dodge the political ramifications of being tagged with blame, the administration from the president on down hasn't missed an opportunity to point the finger at BP.
BP is ultimately responsible.
BP as the responsible party.
BP is the responsible party.
BP as the responsible party.
As the response to the crisis intensifies, so too is the pressure from some lawmakers to scrap offshore drilling plans recently announced by President Obama. Senators Frank Lautenberg and Robert Menendez of New Jersey wrote a letter to the president asking him to reverse course. Press Secretary Robert Gibbs says he hasn't seen the letter, but added the White House will wait for a review of the accident before deciding how it will impact all drilling decisions going forward.
Now, the president has directed that every deep water platform be inspected. Now, overall, who's in charge of this operation? It is BP, but the federal government is overseeing it. And Robert Gibbs said that they will continue to keep pressure on BP to make sure that the job gets done the right way. Wolf?
Dan Lothian, thanks very much. We're going to speak to the Commandant of the Coast Guard shortly, Thad Allen. Got an important interview with him. But let's go to Democratic Senator Bill Nelson of Florida right now. He's a longtime opponent of offshore oil drilling. He's urged the president to stop any new drilling in the wake of the Gulf spill. Senator Nelson is joining us from Jacksonville right now. Senator, thanks very much for coming in.
Good afternoon, Wolf.
Is there any evidence that any of this oil has reached any of the beaches or areas of Florida, your state?
It's expected to Monday, Wolf. I was just in Pensacola this morning, and those people are panicked. It's the world's most beautiful beaches. All they can do is just be frightened that oil is going to be splashing up on those sugary white sands.
Is there anything that can be done to stop that from happening between now and Monday?
I've talked to everybody that I can get my hands on in the government, including Admiral Mullen, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and they're bringing in the entire resources of the federal government. The Navy is out there in support of the Coast Guard. They have the lead. They've got booms, they've got skimmers, they've done burns. The problem is that the waves are crashing over the booms. So when you get a massive spill like this, the only thing you can really do is to try to cut off the oil. And that's where the problem is. Those safety devices did not work.
Who's to blame for this?
Well, you've got to look to who manufactured the safety devices and who maintained them and who bears the responsibility. You've got these pistons that are supposed to drive together automatically when there's a blowout, and then when that doesn't happen, further on the pipe is supposed to cut off. They call it the dead man cutoff, and if that doesn't work, then they're supposed to have a remote device, either through a signal acoustically or a submersible that goes down there and drive those pistons together and cut off the oil, and none of that has worked, Wolf.
The Obama administration, the president announced with great fanfare only a month or so ago that he now supports offshore oil drilling, not only along the Atlantic coast, but along the Florida coast as well. You hated that decision, that announcement he made a month ago. Do you have any reason to believe he will backtrack now and say, you know what, it's never going to happen?
I think he's going to have to face the reality that he's just not going to have the support. With all of this catastrophe and monstrosity that's potentially going to happen, I mean, there's just no way that you can go and say that you want to drill up close to the shore. At least the administration was kind enough, Ken Salazar, the Interior Secretary, they originally wanted to drill up to 75 miles off of Florida's Gulf Coast, and I said, you know, we're not even going to consider it within 125 miles, and we're not going to consider it unless the Secretary of Defense says that his test and training area isn't going to be impeded. And of course the Secretary's position is that you can't have oil rigs where you're testing sophisticated weapons. One
final question, because we're out of time. Should the president go even further and put a moratorium, a freeze right now, suspend all offshore oil drilling on the West Coast, the East Coast, Alaska, every place else, pending a complete investigation of what happened in the Gulf of Mexico?
He should suspend the exploratory wells, Wolf.
What about the existing ones?
Existing wells, I think you're okay. But it's the exploratory. That's what exploded this time. It was an exploratory well. It wasn't a producing well.
Senator Nelson, good luck to all the folks, not only in Florida, but along that Gulf Coast. This is a horrendous situation. We're going to be speaking with Thad Allen, the Commandant of the Coast Guard, and I know he has some strong views. He's the lead agency. He's in charge of the lead agency involved right now. Appreciate it, Senator.
Thanks, Wolf.
A week after that Arizona law